You put out a feeler tweet, I think it was a couple of days ago, about how would you feel, Penn State fan base, if Fran Brown was the head coach, that is who they decided to choose. What was the fan base's general reaction to that?
It seemed like a resounding no, not collectively, but the people that were saying this is a hard no. And then you would get, a lot of likes on that, or just a lot of interaction with that post. So I'm going to take this as, and it's the same thing how Penn State sees this too. And as you do, Fran Brown is not the first choice for Penn State, but he is a possibility. I would say, again, there's that first group of Mike Elko. I didn't even mention Eli Drinkwitz because he's already been, this is on the record, he's already been contacted by Penn State. Apparently Marcus On3 is reporting that Penn State and Marcus Freeman have been in contact with one another. Whether Marcus Freeman is actually entertaining it, there is no stone that Penn State is not going to turn over here to find the right head coach, meaning that, Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, anybody. It truly is anybody and everybody, but eliminate the possibilities where, no, Ryan Day would not leave Ohio State. Dan Lanning would not leave Oregon. Marcus Freeman would not leave Notre Dame unless it's for Ohio State. But what about Eli Drinkwitz? What about Mike Elko? What about Manny Diaz coming back to State College? There are a lot of realistic possibilities that, okay, well, we don't think it's likely. Okay, but eliminate the impossible choices of the three that I named, and then everybody else seems to be fair game. So because of that, while Fran Brown is still a rising star in the coaching world, because I named about 4 or 5 other names that Penn State's still going to have a preference for first, because they just have more proven experience. They've led a Big Ten. They're looking for somebody that's had success or the Big Ten or the SEC level. While I like Fran Brown as a candidate a ton, I think he's a phenomenal recruiter. Give him a bigger war chest and he will absolutely dominate. At the end of the day, though, we still don't know how he's going to handle a Big Ten or an SEC powerhouse program. I mean, Penn State's a top 10 job. So how would Brown do in that situation? We don't know. And I don't think Penn State, you don't pay James Franklin $50 million to go take a chance on a what if, to an extent, even though I've said, hey, a Will Stein, I think, would be a really good candidate. But it sounds like Penn State, even with the buyout, is not hurting for money. So Mike Elko, my personal top choice, but even Urban Meyer becomes a little more realistic for them. Even a Nick Saban, long shots, but don't count them out.
I hit on it also yesterday when discussing Fran Brown, and we are, I think, in agreement with it. I think that Fran Brown, once you eliminate the impossible category, he is, I think, a second-tier option for Penn State, where they somehow strike out on all their top-tier guys, and then you look at the second tier, and you do need a head coach for next season. It's not like you can go coachless. And in that case, I would start to worry about really the possibility of Fran Brown and Penn State, because you look at Fran Brown's resume, and I do think it's very impressive. I do think it's a resume where there are a lot of schools in the country that would want Fran Brown, but I think those schools are not necessarily on a level where it would make much sense to leave Syracuse to join X program. Like, it would almost be maybe a slight bump up, but not enough to where it's almost like a lateral move. Going to Penn State is definitely not a lateral move for Fran Brown if he were to get that job opportunity. You look at what he's done so far at Syracuse. He's obviously completely changed the game as far as recruiting. Zach, you already hit on it in the first segment, how he's competing with Penn State now, and how Penn State typically wins because they're Penn State and they got more resources. Fran Brown is not making it easier on Penn State with recruiting, and we're seeing that, and we'll touch on this in a second, with the impact of recruiting here with the James Franklin firing, and how Fran Brown, he's certainly taking advantage with getting.
Oh, he's going to capitalize on it.
Oh, he's getting some of these guys on campus already. Khalil Taylor, Keemon Spell, they're coming on campus now. Yeah. They were previously committed to Penn State. So you know that Fran Brown, he's a rising star, and he goes 10-3 in his first year. And I do think there's an alternate universe, if Steve Angeli had stayed healthy, that he might be a tier 1 candidate for Penn State. Because if Syracuse, I think we're 5-1 right now, Zach, you'd be on here saying, I would want Fran Brown as a tier 1 option. But the reality is of what's happened, and it's not necessarily Fran's fault, is that his quarterback tore his Achilles in the Clemson game.
Yes.
And his backup quarterback in Ricky Collins is not making him look like a good head coach right now. That's for sure, because the team is now losing games. It doesn't look like, when you look at their second half of the schedule, based on how they've looked with Ricky Collins, that they're going to make a bowl. And so I'm sitting here saying, you just fire James Franklin, and now you're going to hire a coach who did not make a bowl in his second season at Syracuse. It's no disrespect to Fran Brown, because we understand the circumstances, but this is the Penn State job. You're not taking a chance like that. I just don't see a world where that happens unless they strike out on everyone.
Penn State, I mean, when they hired James Franklin 12 years ago, it was, I mean, he had SEC experience. So, and when I say SEC experience, I mean leading a program and proven. I mean, he was 9-3 at Vanderbilt for 3 consecutive seasons, or maybe he was 8-4 in that one season. Anyway, he still racked up about 26, 27 victories at Vanderbilt at the time when college football was a lot different. Okay. So that's what Penn State is looking for. Being 500 in the ACC. Now, I know there's some nuance here, right? I'm not dismissing anything that, oh, well, Fran Brown, has lost control of his team or still can't. I mean, that Clemson victory, right? Going on the road when your team is fairly healthy and winning the way that they did is impressive. And Penn State's not naive enough to look past it and say, like, well, he lost a couple of other games that he shouldn't have. That's not going to define Fran Brown as a head coach there. But it's really about, what have you proven to this point? He hasn't been a coordinator. He hasn't led a Big Ten or an SEC program. Again, Penn State is promising national championships. That's what they put their stake in the ground, and they said, we are chasing national championships. You can guarantee that. I don't know that that's Fran Brown right now in 5 to 10 years. I think that's the trajectory he's on. So, but that's the idea, is that you take a chance on him right now to get to that point and get situated. But I think Penn State is just looking, since they made that kind of promise, you have to go get somebody that can still improve, but is already at close to that level right now. I don't know that Fran Brown is close, but I think he can get there in due time.